My name is Rachel Evans. I'm 27 years old, and to most people who saw me growing up, I looked like the picture-perfect daughter. I always had my hair neat, my clothes tidy, and a polite smile glued to my face. I was well-mannered, responsible, and helpful. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't see, was that inside my own house, I wasn't treated like a daughter at all. I was treated like the maid, not a helper. Not someone who occasionally pitched in. No. I was the unpaid, unthanked, unappreciated maid of the Evans household. From the age of 10, my daily routine wasn't school homework play like other kids. It was school chores, more chores. As soon as I came home, my mom would hand me a dish towel and point to the sink piled high with plates. "You know what to do," she'd say flatly, as if my existence in this family depended on keeping the kitchen spotless. And my dad? He didn't ask for help. He demanded it. The trash wasn't taken out. That was on me. Shoes weren't lined up neatly by the door. My fault. My brother Ethan forgot his uniform for soccer practice. Guess who was blamed? I was never Rachel, the daughter. I was Rachel, the maid who lives here rent-free. One particular memory still stings. I was about 15 when I finally gathered the courage to complain. I remember sitting at the dinner table, exhausted after a day at school, when I said quietly, "Mom, Dad, why does Ethan never have to do chores? Why is it always me?" My mother's fork clinked against her plate as she looked at me coldly. "Because you're the girl, Rachel. You should learn responsibility. One day, you'll have a husband, and you'll thank me for teaching you discipline. And my father?" He added, "If you live under this roof, you earn your keep. Don't like it? You know where the door is." I was 15. Where would I go? So I swallowed the lump in my throat and said nothing. From that day forward, I stopped asking questions. Ethan, meanwhile, lounged on the couch playing video games. He got praised for scoring goals at soccer practice, for bringing home participation trophies, for being the future man of the family. And me? I was invisible, except when something needed to be scrubbed, folded, or ironed. By the time I was in high school, I was waking up at 6 a.m. to pack lunches, clean up the living room, and fold laundry before catching the bus. Teachers praised me for being so responsible, but they had no idea that responsibility wasn't a choice for me. It was a cage. College was supposed to be my escape. I studied harder than anyone I knew. Late nights with textbooks spread across the kitchen table, scribbling notes under the dim light while my parents slept peacefully upstairs. I thought, if I just get into a good university, maybe they'll finally respect me. And somehow I did it. I got accepted into a prestigious business program. I remember holding the acceptance letter in my trembling hands, tears filling my eyes. "Mom, Dad, I got in," I said, bursting with pride. Do you know what my mother said? She didn't hug me. She didn't congratulate me. She just glanced at the letter and said, "That's nice, but don't forget to vacuum before dinner guests arrive tonight." And my dad? He muttered, "Don't get too excited. You'll probably drop out like everyone else. Focus on helping your mother." The ache in my chest that day is something I'll never forget. Still, I went. I worked part-time jobs, applied for scholarships, and pushed myself harder than ever. And while other students went home to care packages from their parents, I went home on weekends to scrub floors and fold laundry. Even in college, I was never free of their grip. At graduation, when I walked across the stage with honors, my parents didn't even attend. They claimed Ethan had a soccer match they couldn't miss. Instead, I stood there alone, looking out into the audience, hoping for a familiar face, but finding none. It hurt. God, it hurt, but maybe it was also the moment that planted the seed inside me. The seed that whispered, "You don't need them. You can build something for yourself." After graduation, I landed an internship at a small startup. It was scrappy, chaotic, and full of risk, but for the first time, I felt like my hard work meant something. I stayed late, learned everything I could, and climbed rung after rung until I was no longer the girl doing coffee runs. I was the one making decisions. By 26, I was named COO, and when the founder retired unexpectedly, the board shocked everyone, including me. By voting me in as CEO, I was stunned. Me? The girl who used to scrub floors and polish silverware? A CEO, but deep down, I knew I had earned it. Every sleepless night, every paper written with tears in my eyes, every time I swallowed my pride at home, it had all forged me into someone strong enough to carry that title. And yet, I didn't tell my parents. Why? Because in their eyes, I was still just the maid. Despite my promotion, I didn't call home. I didn't rush to share the news. Because somewhere deep inside, I already knew what the reaction would be. If I told my parents, they wouldn't beam with pride. They wouldn't say, "We're so proud of you, Rachel." No. My mom would probably say something like, "That's nice, but don't forget to eat properly." And my dad? He'd raise an eyebrow and say, "CEO? Let's see how long that lasts." So I stayed silent. I let them believe I was still just their helper. It wasn't until months later that they called me. My dad's voice was unusually cheerful. "Rachel, we're hosting a dinner next weekend. Very important guest. A CEO, big deal in the tech industry. You should come, it'll be good for you." I nearly laughed into the phone. Good for me? Or good for them? Still, something inside me wanted to see. I wanted to know if, after all this time, they'd finally look at me differently. "Okay," I said simply. And just like that, my fate was sealed. The night of the dinner, I arrived a little early. Foolishly, I thought maybe we'd spend some time together before the guest arrived. Maybe I'd sit at the table with my parents, share a glass of wine, and feel like family. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew better. "Rachel," my mom snapped, handing me a stack of napkins. "Fold these properly, and make sure the silverware is polished. We can't embarrass ourselves tonight." My dad didn't even say hello. He pointed to the glasses on the table. "Spotless, Rachel. Not a single smudge. Do you understand?" And just like that, I was 15 again. Back in that suffocating house where love was conditional and respect didn't exist. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the napkins in their faces and shout, "I'm a CEO now, not your maid." But instead, I stayed silent. I folded the napkins. I polished the glasses. I played the role I had been assigned all my life, just one more time. The doorbell rang. My parents practically jumped to attention. My dad straightened his tie, my mom smoothed her dress, and Ethan, my golden boy brother, slouched in with a forced grin. When they opened the door, in walked Mr. Harris, the very CEO they had been gushing about for weeks. He was tall, confident, the kind of man who made rooms go quiet when he entered. My parents lit up like Christmas lights. My dad shook his hand so hard I thought he'd break it. My mom's voice dripped with sweetness. "Mr. Harris, welcome, welcome. Please, come in. We're so honored you're here." I stood in the corner, invisible, just like always. Until I wasn't. Mr. Harris scanned the room, then his eyes landed on me. His face broke into a wide grin. "Rachel!" he exclaimed, stepping right past my parents and holding out his hand. "What a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here." The room went dead silent. I felt every pair of eyes swing toward me, my mom's painted smile faltering, my dad's brows knitting together, Ethan's mouth falling open. I shook Mr. Harris's hand firmly. "Good to see you again, Mr. Harris," he chuckled warmly. "Are you kidding? Everyone at the firm still talks about you. Taking over as CEO at such a young age? That's no small feat. Congratulations again, boss." Boss. That word hung in the air like thunder. My parents froze, their perfect performance shattering. My mom's jaw trembled. My dad's face turned red. Ethan looked like someone had just told him gravity stopped working. And me? For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I stood tall. "Thank you," I said, my voice calm, steady. "That means a lot." The rest of dinner was excruciating. For my parents, at least. Mr. Harris spent most of the evening talking to me. He asked about my vision for the company, my leadership style, even my personal hobbies. He called me an inspiration more than once. And my parents? They sat there in stunned silence, trying to piece together a reality where their maid was suddenly someone important. I caught my mom forcing a laugh once, trying to jump into the conversation. "Well, Rachel's always been organized." Mr. Harris smiled politely but didn't take the bait. He turned back to me. "Organized? She's a leader. You should be proud." Proud, the word my parents had never used for me. Not once. And now, the very man they were desperate to impress had handed it to them on a silver platter. After Mr. Harris left that night, the house was unnervingly quiet. No cheerful chatter, no polite small talk. Just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. My dad paced by the window, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. My mom sat rigid at the table, her hands trembling around an untouched glass of wine. Ethan had disappeared to his room, probably too embarrassed to face me. Finally, my dad turned. His voice was low, almost a growl. "Why didn't you tell us?" I met his eyes calmly. "Because you never asked." The words landed like a slap. For years I had been waiting, praying for them to notice me, to ask me about my life, to treat me like more than a servant. And in all that time, not once had they bothered. My mom's voice broke the silence, sharp and defensive. "Do you have any idea how humiliated we felt tonight? Sitting there while he praised you like some hero? Do you know what it looked like? Like we didn't even know our own daughter." I tilted my head. "Maybe because you don't." Her face twisted, but I didn't stop. For the first time, I let the words pour out. You know, every detail about Ethan's soccer games, his favorite meals, his grades in school. But me? You've never even asked what I do for a living. You've never come to my graduations. You've never said you were proud. The only thing you've ever cared about is whether the house was clean or the table set properly. My dad's nostrils flared. "Don't you dare talk to us like that. We gave you a roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back," I laughed bitterly. "And in return, you got a free maid." That wasn't parenting. That was exploitation. My mom slammed her hand against the table, making the glasses rattle. "Don't be ungrateful, Rachel. Do you know how many sacrifices we made for you?" I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. "Name one," she froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because the truth was, they hadn't sacrificed for me. I had sacrificed for them. My teenage years, my joy, my sense of worth. All burned at the altar of keeping their home spotless and their egos intact. "I'm not ungrateful," I said softly. "I'm just done." Just then, Ethan crept back into the room, his eyes darting nervously between us. He had overheard everything. "Come on, Rach," he said weakly. "You're overreacting. Mom and Dad, they're just old-fashioned. You know how it is." I turned to him, a sharp laugh escaping my throat. "Old-fashioned?" "No, Ethan. Old-fashioned is teaching your kids discipline. What they did was use me like a servant while you got to play prince." He looked wounded, but I didn't let up. "Did you ever once stand up for me? Did you ever tell them it wasn't fair?" "No, because you liked it that way. You liked being the golden boy while I scrubbed the floors." Ethan dropped his gaze, shame flickering in his eyes. But he said nothing. He never did. My dad's voice rose, sharp as a whip. "That's enough. You think being some CEO makes you better than us? Makes you too good for your family?" I stood finally fully without an ounce of fear. "No, being CEO doesn't make me better. But it reminded me of something I should have known all along. I don't have to be your maid to deserve love. And if love here only comes with conditions, then maybe I don't need it at all." My mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My dad's face turned an ugly shade of crimson. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt free. I walked toward the door. "Rachel," my mom cried. "Don't you dare walk out on this family!" I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Then I turned back one last time. If this is family, then maybe I was never part of it to begin with. And I left. That night, as I drove back to my apartment, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, voicemails, my parents demanding I come back, Ethan begging me to not make things worse. I ignored them all. For the first time in my life, I let silence speak for me. The next morning, when I walked into my office, my employees greeted me with respect, with admiration, with genuine warmth. People who weren't related to me saw my worth more clearly than the two who had raised me ever did. And in that moment, I realized something life-changing. I didn't need their approval anymore. The days that followed were a storm. My phone was flooded with notifications. Dozens of missed calls from my parents, countless texts from Ethan, voicemails filled with guilt, anger, and desperation. At first, the messages were accusatory. "How dare you humiliate us in front of a guest? You've turned arrogant. Money has poisoned you." Then they shifted to guilt. "We're your parents. You can't just abandon us. Do you want to ruin this family? After everything we did for you?" And finally, desperation. "Rachel, please. Your mother hasn't slept since that night. We can fix this. Just come home and talk." Each message was another attempt to drag me back into the old role, the obedient daughter, the maid in disguise. But I didn't reply. I poured myself a cup of coffee each morning, glanced at the messages, and went on with my day. For the first time, my life was mine. A week later, Ethan showed up at my office unannounced. He looked out of place in the sleek glass building, tugging nervously at his jacket. "Rach?" he said softly when my assistant let him in. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms but gestured for him to sit. He took a deep breath. They're a mess, Rachel. Mom cries every night. Dad's furious but also scared. They don't know what to do without you. I raised an eyebrow. Without me? Or without someone to cook and clean and sacrifice for them? He winced. Look, I know they weren't fair to you. I should have said something years ago. But you're still their daughter. Can't you forgive them? I leaned forward. Forgiveness isn't the problem, Ethan. It's boundaries. They don't want a daughter. They want a maid. And I refuse to play that part anymore. For once, Ethan didn't argue. His eyes dropped to the floor. You're right, he whispered. I let them spoil me while you carried everything. I'm sorry. It was the first time he had ever said those words to me. And maybe the first step toward change, for him at least. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line, family. It was long, emotional, filled with half apologies and half justifications. My mom wrote about how things were different in our time, how she thought making me responsible would make me stronger. My dad added that he only pushed me because he wanted me to be tough, but sprinkled between those excuses were the same old manipulations. Don't abandon us now, when we need you. Think of how it looks if you cut ties with your own family. At the end, one line stood out. Come home. We can start fresh, but we expect you to remember your place. Your place. That phrase burned into my brain. After everything, after my success, after their humiliation, after I stood up for myself, they still thought I had a place. And that place was beneath them. I closed the email without replying. Months passed. My parents stopped calling as often, though every once in a while, a guilt-laced message would slip through. I never blocked them completely, but I didn't engage either. My silence became my shield. Instead, I built something new. I joined a book club. I traveled for the first time in years, not to visit family, but because I wanted to. I spent weekends with friends who valued me not for what I could do for them, but simply for being me. At work, I led my company through challenges, celebrated wins with my team, and found fulfillment in being respected for my abilities, not exploited for my obedience. And slowly, the weight I had carried for 27 years began to lift. One evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky. My phone buzzed with a final message from my dad. We don't understand you, Rachel, but maybe we never will. If you're happy, then that's enough. It wasn't an apology. Not really, but it was the closest thing I'd ever get. I stared at the message for a long time, then set the phone down. And for the first time in decades, I felt something rare, something powerful. Peace. Looking back, I realized something important. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hold you back the hardest. They convince you that love must be earned through service, through silence, through sacrifice. But real love doesn't demand servitude. Real love doesn't keep you small. My parents may never see me as anything but the maid they created, but the world sees me differently. My colleagues see a leader. My friends see a loyal companion. And I see me, a woman who finally claimed her own worth. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. You don't owe anyone your dignity, not even your family. If they only value you when you serve them, then your silence, your absence, your boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival, and sometimes the sweetest justice is when the very people who called you a servant are forced to hear the world call you what you truly are. Boss.